Welcome back. We're looking at how the Republican Party will reshape itself after 8 years of the Bush administration. The divisions that emerged during the presidential campaign suggest that the GOP faces some major challenges. For the world watching serious issues such as the crisis in Gaza, the stalemate in Iraq and the dangers in Afghanistan, what a reinvented Republican Party might offer is of great interest. Discussing this, we have one of the best-known conservative strategists in Washington, D.C., Grover Norquist, who's also president and founder of Americans for Tax Reform and supporter of the Reagan Republicanism. His latest book is Leave Us Alone, Getting the Government's Hands Off Our Money, Our Guns, Our Lives. Also here in D.C. with me is a leading conservative with a different perspective, David Frum, a former special assistant and speechwriter to President George W. Bush, and now resident fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. David's author of Comeback, Conservatism That Can Win Again. And in fact, David, you also have a new website, newmajority.com, which is the next step forward, you see. Yeah?
Launches on 20th of January on Inauguration Day, and it's part of an attempt to jumpstart a conversation about the future direction of the party. We have a lot of people from, I'll be doing a lot of writing, but others too, some strategists from McCain and Giuliani campaigns, Michael Powell, the former Federal Communications Chairman, is Communications Commission Chairman, will write for us, some historians, and some new young people whom we have not heard from, to try to create a new model of what the Republican Party could look like.
Well, Grover, we had before the break, the issue of how America, and David mentioned how the core Republican sort of voter base has shrunk and how the demographics in America have changed. How much do you take that into account when you look at how the Reagan-era Republicanism might be applied in this day and age, 20 years, or more than 20 years on now, almost 20 years on, say?
Sure.
How would it be applied with the changing demographics? Who's the voter base now for you?
Well, look, just about everybody should be available to the modern Republican Party. If you don't run a labor union, if you're not a trial lawyer, and you don't run a big city political machine, we're not going to get those guys. On the other hand, we should be speaking to all immigrant communities. They tend to be very active as they came here for economic reasons. And we need to speak to all communities of faith with respect. And look, we can offer one thing the Democrats can't. We'll leave you alone. We'll leave your family alone, your faith alone, your kids alone, your business alone, your money alone, and your property alone. And everybody that the government messes with and pokes at is available to us. With Obama and Reid and Pelosi having a long list of people they intend to pick their pockets and push them around, that helps organize us, particularly hard hat job people. Most of the environmentalist rules that they've come up with have been killing General Motors and killing the guys who work in oil fields and killing 500,000 jobs in the timber industry and the mining industry out west. So there's a whole group of people that the environmental movement destroys their life, their community, has taken away their towns.
Who would you look to attract? Yeah.
Let me start with this stark contrast. In 1988, which wasn't that long ago, George H.W. Bush defeated Michael Dukakis among college graduates by 25 points. This time around, Barack Obama defeated John McCain among college graduates. Barack Obama is the first Democrat in history to have won the votes, a majority of the votes or a plurality of the votes of people with four-year college degrees. So that is a gigantic shift. And this is not a small population. Even in white America, which is the core Republican group, back as recently as 1990, only a fifth of white Americans had a college degree. Today, almost a third do. Now, we have lost that population massively, and I'm afraid the environmental issue is part of the reason. That group is environmentalist. We have to have an environmental message if we are going to talk to them. And the most promising, any marketer can tell you, if you're dealing with a brand that's lost share, your best market are the people who used to buy your product. So yes, we should, as Grover says, we should try to reach out to everybody. But the people we should be most worried about are the people who used to vote for us, the college graduates who care about the environment, value competence, want a more moderate social face, and above all, value competence. That's our brand, that's our people.
Before I get to a call, let me ask you, how can you call, for example, the African American, the black population, when you have Republican leaders like Chip Saltzman, the Tennessee Party chairman? He distributed a holiday CD to party members with a parody song called Barack the Magic Negro.
Well, I'm sure to paraphrase Grover, I'm sure he would agree with this, that it never is a good idea to do stupid things, so don't be insulting and don't be rude. But the African American community, while there is this exciting moment of the first African American president, is obviously not going to be a fertile place for Republicans to gather votes. But college graduates, people with four-year degrees who used to vote overwhelmingly Republican, that is a fertile market. Let's think about how we win them back.
Let's get a caller on the line. Nadia in Paris, what would you like to ask?
Hello.
Hi, go ahead.
Yes, I have a question, please. We're talking about, the crisis, the economic crisis, and so on.
Please.
There was something that happened during the, McCain-Palin, run, and I would say we are in a city of high fashion, and we like that, and it's good for a spouse to look proper, and so on. We had the problem they had with Palin, who is back on the scene, and I believe hurting the Republican Party, talking about everything that happened to her, and blaming everyone left and right.
So Nadia,
but did anyone talk about the spouse, Mrs. McCain? She treated us to quite a fashion show. Very, very expensive clothes. If you take picture after picture,
Nadia?
day after day.
Of course, sorry, I want to get, because we're running out of time, but Grover, obviously the image presented is an important thing, and I wonder, the issue of Sarah Palin was brought up here, and I wonder whether it was a wise move or not in the end when it looked at, what sort of message did it send out?
In the entire campaign, there was 1 2-week period when McCain was ahead. Those were the 2 weeks after he picked Sarah Palin and before he endorsed George Bush's $750 billion bailout and sank his campaign, and it never came back. You had McCain, who had run as the guy who was the outsider, who wasn't Bush, who didn't even like George Bush, and who was against all this spending. He came into Washington, he hugged George Bush, and he hugged all the spending. That was a little bit of a challenge, but Palin was the one candidate who could have addressed the $4 a gallon gasoline. McCain had taken all your advice on being nice to the environmentalists at the expense of not drilling for oil out west. So it's an issue that's fine until the price of oil goes up, and then all of a sudden people are less excited about not drilling in Anwar.
There's a question that came in, David, from Australia, if I may put this to you, from a regular viewer, Sonoma, who wrote in from Sydney saying, neocons evolve from disillusioned liberals. If Obama continues Bush's aggressive military intervention, regime change and unconditional support for Israel, will the Republicans be compelled to turn away from neocon policies in order to be electorally viable? I guess really what it comes down to is how much should Republicans be willing to compromise to get elected?
Well, they should be willing to adapt their policies without compromising their principles. The Republican Party will be the party of strong national defense. Both political parties, I think, in this country, like a broad section of opinion generally, support the strong American relationship with Israel. I don't think that's where the competition is going to be over the next 4 years. The competition over the next 4 years is going to be about economic issues, about the crisis that is going to happen in living standards, and Republicans are going to need to develop some good, relevant answers to that. And on the environment, they have to be an environmental party, and they have to not chase the crisis of the moment. They have to play for a longer game.
An email here for you, Grover, came in from Sabah Abdu in Eritrea, who wrote in saying, the global economic meltdown dictates that higher taxes are unavoidable for the next 30 years. To what extent does this undermine the Republican brand, which is based on the tax cut mantra and which made Reagan republicanism attractive in the 1980s?
Well, there's nothing inevitable about a lot of stupid spending. George Bush did a lot of stupid spending. Some of the Republicans in Congress were involved in that. And Obama and the Democrats are now taking all of George Bush's spending and deciding to double it. So this is all their spending. Now we have 2 models. 1990, George Bush dad sat down with the Democrats, spent more, taxed more, lost the next election. 93, 94, the Republicans stood back and said to the Democrats, you can tax more and spend more, and we're not having anything to do with that. We took the House and the Senate back. You want to hold hands with Reid, Pelosi, and Obama while they spend us into oblivion, you're going to lose the next election. You want to step away from them and let them do that on their own, you can beat them in the next election. But not if you have blood on your hands.
Do you believe that the market can stabilize itself without any bailouts, without any help, that everyone should be left to fend for themselves?
It can only stabilize itself if the government doesn't get in and subsidize failure. The $750 billion they're talking about is not going to help the economy, and it's not going to stabilize anything. And it's what we did during the Great Recession to turn it into the Great Depression for 10 years.
David, about a minute ago, and I want to ask you what you think the next step should be now for the Republican Party. Of course, you're putting your newmajority.com website with advice and stuff out there. What do you think should be done?
I think the first thing we need to have a big process of party widening and inclusion. I think we need also to be prepared for some very dramatic things to come out of Washington that are going to remind Republicans what they don't like about Obama, and are going to reintroduce a generation that's now in high school to the reasons why those of us who were in high school in the 1970s became conservatives in the first place.
Now, can you get a wide enough voter base? Can you do that? Everyone is so sort of proud of the change.
We can't do it in 2 weeks. We probably can't do it in 2 years. Can we do it by 2012? I hope so. Can we do it by 2014? For sure.
Okay. Quick thought there, Grover, 30 seconds to go. Your view on the next step for the Republican Party? Or the Conservative?
Organize. Look, we are today almost exactly where we were in 1993. Same number of House guys, one fewer senator, one more governor, 216 more state legislators, 7 more state houses, and 4 more state senates. We're actually, the Republican Party, slightly stronger today than we were when we lost to Clinton. We came back in 2 years. It may take us longer than 2 years, but the party's not in any worse shape than it was back then.
Okay, well, gentlemen, good to have you both on.
Thank you.
And thank you for being with us. On tomorrow's show, we speak with the first Muslim American elected to Congress about the historical inauguration of Barack Obama. And just a note, you can join Rob Reynolds, Al Jazeera's senior Washington correspondent, to discuss the U.S. response to the crisis in Gaza, the legacy of outgoing President George Bush, and what the world expects from the Obama administration. That'll be on Thursday, the 15th of January at 2100 hours GMT in Live Station's chat room. That's all from me and the team. We'll see you next time.